Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another special edition of Vantage Point, where we bring you highlights of Day 5 of the ANC Policy Conference here from Nasrec, just outside Soweto. Today, most of the delegates, the 5,000 or so delegates, are locked in very tense meetings where policy discussions will be taking place, and these policies will be put through to the main conference in December. And these policies that we've been listening to about in the last few days: organizational renewal, radical economic transformation, the fight against monopoly capital, not white monopoly capital, but monopoly capital, and how can the ANC be the party to take the country forward in 2019 and beyond. So for the next few minutes, sit back and relax and join us as we bring you some interviews with the role players from the ANC's 5th National Policy Conference. When one thinks of ANC royalty, the following names come to mind: the Tambos, the Sisulus, the Mandelas, the Kathradas, and the Lutulis. And today I'm delighted to be joined by the son of struggle stalwart and one of the true leaders of the ANC, O.R. Tambo. I'm delighted to be joined by Dali Tambo. Dali, thank you so much for joining us on ITV. This year, 2017, is the year of O.R. Tambo. As a family, how proud are you that the ANC have recognized such a giant of the struggle against apartheid?
Very, very proud, deeply honored. It's something which is very fulfilling because you suddenly get to see the way in which his legacy is attached to the movement. That although he's up there with the rest of our ancestors, there's a feeling of him still being around in terms of public memory and in terms of the memory of the movement, and the way in which they celebrate certain qualities that he had and his colleagues had, which inspired so many and which really allowed them to steer the ship of revolution to port. So it's a wonderful thing, and you know, I celebrate him every year and every day, but it's beautiful to be joined in that celebration by others.
Okay, a bit of a tough question now. With what's happening in the ANC as we see it, in talks of organizational renewal, if your father was here, if Tata Madiba was here, if Ahmed Kathrada, we know what he felt, what would their feelings be seeing the party that they fought so much for and they loved so much really degenerating really to a low point in its history, where there's actually talk of the ANC being scared of losing the 2019 election, something that was very far from our memories a few years ago?
Well, my personal opinion is that they led by example. And that example wasn't just when they were alive. It remains there for us as a lodestar to draw upon, to walk towards. Principled leadership, moral heights of revolutionary struggle, ethical self-sacrifice, a real kind of embodiment of the movement within themselves and vice versa. So I think that, yes, it's a difficult time for the movement, but they will know that there were other very, very difficult times when the whole world said we were finished and there was no coming back from it. I personally believe that we'll emerge from this much, much stronger. And part of the reason why we'll unite and emerge stronger is because we have the example of those icons, those statues that are over there, and those lives that were led, the Joe Slovos, the Ruth First, the Walter Sisulus, Lillian Ngoys, etc., etc. They are our moral and ethical legacy. And as long as we hold fast to that, then I think we can't go too wrong. And so what I see happening is a sort of self-correction, where we're saying, hang on guys, we steered a little from the path here. Let's come back to it. Otherwise, some are going to go this way, some are going to go that way. Let's all decide our path. Let's go there united. And also, you know, the whole thing of sins of incumbency and things like this, we must never forget it's the minority. The majority of our members, of ANC serving officials, of ANC people put into government and things, are self-sacrificing, committed, determined individuals who believe that their presence on earth is to continue the sacred mission of delivering liberty, economic and political, to our people and improving their lives. So that's the core of the movement. And it's that core that gives me optimism that we will hold fast to the values and morals of those who walked before us.
Yesterday, in one of the press conferences, something very important came, was we cannot have political freedom without economic freedom. And we're 23 years into our democracy now. Do you feel that the ANC need to do more to economically emancipate the people of the country? And do you think the ANC can do that?
Yes. First, I think we do need to do more. It's not going to be easy. We live in a capitalist world, in a capitalist country. So there are many forces ranged against us who don't want to see that social change because it'll disturb the looting that has taken place amongst the top capitalist entities and institutions. But I think it's totally essential that we take ourselves firmly and move in that direction very, very quick. We cannot go through another generation of irreducible poverty. And hard as that mission is, that is the mission of the ANC. It's the only social and political formation that is capable of delivering that. So as you say, it's been 23 years. We've transformed this country, but we have to speed up the pace of transformation and do it with a determination that means that, yes, even when people come and say, we're not going to invest, we're not going to do this, etc., we say, okay, but we're going forward anyway. We have to do that.
Mr. Tambo, and finally, your family and a lot of the old stalwarts of the ANC, the relationship with the South African Muslim community went back. When you think of people like Dr. Dadu, the late Ahmed Timol, so many families were involved. Your relationship, your family's relationship also went back many years with the Muslim community in this country. And what did the Muslim community do for the ANC from your perspective?
They were an essential part of our struggle, as you say, going back before 1912, but certainly since 1912, you wouldn't have had an ANC without that strong, solid part of our society and our membership coming from the Muslim community. Secondly, I think they've played an incredible role socially since 1994. They really are one of the unifying factors. If you look at communities across the length and breadth of this country, you see Muslim activists in this community, in that community, feeding people, building, etc. So I'm very proud of the role that they've played in the past, and more especially the role that they're playing currently. And we honor and revere our Muslim comrades within our struggle today, but we also hold dear in our hearts the memory of those who went before. Part of our social cohesion must be to know each other, and so we have to bring these communities closer together. Our African people come in all kinds of persuasions with deep religious beliefs and things, but we're one people and we share a common destiny. So we must work together towards that destiny. And I think when you look around society, one of the communities that is really excelling in contributing to the new dispensation, to the new South Africa, is the Muslim community. We can only thank them every time they're there and every time they're putting their bit in. So from our family's perspective, I'm sure even from the movement's perspective, we thank them and we say, you know, keep doing what you're doing. It's an incredible contribution and it will not go unnoticed.
Mr. Tambo, thank you so much for your time. I think really interesting points you put through regarding the legacy of your dad, as well as the role that Muslims played and can play going forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, my
Thank you.
brother.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.
That was Dali Tambo, the son of ANC, former ANC President Oliver Reginald Tambo, just speaking to us on a few pertinent points, and something that really stood out was the role that Muslim people have played and the role that Muslims can play going forward in South Africa to ensure a prosperous nation for all of us to live in. Interesting thoughts there from Dali Tambo. We're going to take a short break now, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Vantage Point on ITV, where we're bringing you highlights from the ANC's 5th National Policy Conference. In this segment of the show, we're going to be chatting to Gwede Mantashe, who'll speak to us more on the ANC regeneration of the party. And then very interestingly, I speak to a journalist from Power FM, Dalila Niselo, who'll speak to us about media freedom and some of the issues that journalists are facing at the ANC Policy Conference. I'm delighted to be joined now by ANC Secretary General Gwede Mantashe. Mr. Mantashe, welcome to ITV.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mantashe, the last few days we've been hearing a lot about organizational renewal. You presented a paper on day one also regarding the health of the organization. Are you satisfied with what has been discussed in the commissions regarding the health of the ANC?
What is helpful in the ANC, when you talk to the delegates from the branches, you come out of the demoralization, the question of sniping each other that happens at the top of the organization. Then you talk to branches who talk reality, who understand the work done in the branches, in communities, who talk to people every day. Then when you come back, you get uplifted. I'm feeling much, much better than when you opened.
Because day one of the conference seemed a bit tense after the president's speech with regards to the stalwarts, and media reports that came out after that painted a very different picture. Do you think the ANC can come out a more united organization following this conference?
No, the problem in South African journalism is that they like dealing with side shows than the main issue. We're in a policy conference. They take it all to be about stalwarts and all that. It's not about stalwarts, it's a policy conference of the ANC, and it is going very well, exceptionally so. And therefore, I don't think we should be dejected. We'll talk to the stalwarts after the conference. I think it was a miscalculation on their part to walk away from an opportunity where branches of the ANC are assembled under one roof. They could have come here, talked to them, influenced them.
Moving on now to certain of the policies that will be discussed, and one of the main issues will be radical economic transformation. It's been the buzzword during the last few weeks.
But the radical economic transformation is a resolution of Mangaung. I don't know why is it a buzzword, it's a resolution. Therefore, once it is a resolution of conference, it is the policy of the ANC. I think we've gone further down in actually trying to give content to it. Okay. We're giving content to it, and it's nice for me. I'm leaving this conference more confident that we should really go radical in economic transformation. We laxed a little bit over the last 23 years.
It seems as the ANC is singing from the same hymn sheet now, considering compared to a few days ago. Does this conference, has it brought more unity?
The conference is actually pulling people aside. They're persuading each other in the commissions. Those who come with the extreme positions are whipped into line to understand that we are a governing party. We're not an opposition party. We're not tabling demands to somebody else. We should address the issues that face communities.
And finally, SG, we know the motion of no confidence in the president will take place in August, in a few weeks' time, on the 8th of August. Are you worried that certain ANC members are going to vote with their conscience, as they say?
I'm not worried at all. Everybody is in parliament as an MP of the ANC. Nobody will do as they wish. There's no organization that works that way. Even those who make a big noise, ODA and EFF in their own constitutions, don't allow that their MPs do as they wish, but they are praying for it to happen to the ANC. It is not going to happen.
SG, thank you so much for your time on ITV. Really interesting thoughts from you.
Thank you very much.
It was ANC Secretary General Gwede Mantashe speaking to us on a broad range of issues. The ANC conference has seen unprecedented media interest with over 1,500 journalists who have applied for accreditation. And just behind us, we can see the media center where journalists have been camped for most of the day, most of the 4 or 5 days that we've been here. Joining me now is Tahila Nisilo from Power FM, a journalist there who will be speaking to us more about the freedom of the press and also what the ANC conference has done for journalism and what barriers we've faced at the conference. Tahila, thank you for joining us on ITV.
Thank you, Mohammed.
Tahila, off air we were speaking about, there's been so many journalists, our room has been full today, there's no place for us to sit. Have you seen things like this at previous events with so many journalists being interested?
I think it's interesting to take note of Huffington Post editor Ferial Haffaj's piece, where she talks about how she attended the first policy conference in 1990 at the same event here, right here at Nasrec, where she said they had absolute access to all the delegates and they were able to be intimately involved and understand their discussions and their decisions on issues such as land, nationalisation, of course being a very big issue back in 1990. And today we've got faced with a situation where there's this wire mesh fence that completely separates the journalists from the delegates. In fact, some of the delegates have even referred to themselves being in a zoo or in a game reserve. So there really seems to be a type of the ANC really seems to be insisting on keeping the flow of information very, very carefully away from the media, feeding it to us in drips and drabs, which I think is going to be a little bit difficult, because where do we find new and interesting ways of trying to understand what's being discussed? How do we put those policies across to people that can understand them? It's not just about the factions, it's not just about who's going to win in December. These are policies that are going to take the country forward for the next 5 years if the ANC does win in 2019. So I think there's a real need for journalists to understand the types of policies that delegates are grappling with. And unfortunately, because of the type of, for want of a better word, Berlin Wall between media and delegates, I don't think that's as possible as it would have been in previous years.
Do you think because of the factional battles, the ANC are trying to portray a united front, thus not allowing journalists to see what's really going on in the halls? I'm sure journalists don't want to spend hours in the halls, but just to get some kind of idea. Just an example, yesterday with the presidential walkabout, journalists felt that they were cooped up in areas where everything seemed very stage managed.
Certainly, Mohammed, and I think this level of paranoia have been increasing at the same time that the ANC's grip on power and their margins at the polls have been decreasing. The fact that when journalists want to go to the business breakfast or they want to follow the president on his walkabout in the Expo Centre, guards line up on both sides and then at the back to ensure that a journalist will not be able to speak to a delegate at any stage. So I think that the ANC is sensing that every week there are new revelations about it in the newspapers. It's coming under a huge amount of criticism from the public, and a lot of that comes from the types of stories that the media is publishing. So they really seem to want to keep the media away from their biggest scandals, which they see as putting themselves in a bad light in the public.
As a journalist now, we've seen the last few days where Black First, Land First have threatened to go to journalists' houses to stop the so-called white monopoly capital journalists reporting. This morning I read a tweet from Andile Msitama saying that they're going to, because Fikile Mbalula's out of the country, they're going to make a trip to the Sunday Times. As a journalist, are you afraid of what's happening? Do you feel that we're going into a stage of censorship? Or do you think Andile and his group are just a group of attention-seeking thugs, for use of a better word?
Well, I think that if people choose to critique the media, that should definitely be welcomed. If they want to stage a protest outside a media office and they want to raise their voice in that way, then that should be welcomed. I think that the Constitution is very clear about people protesting. I think the problem becomes when they target people's homes, because that is a form of intimidation. Not everyone we live with is necessarily a journalist. There might be small children. In the case of the SACP Deputy General Secretary Salima Pailei's young daughter was at home. So I think that there is an attempt to try and intimidate journalists into trying to publish the stories that the Black First Land First group, and if according to the email leaks that we've seen, they're being funded by the Gupta family, the types of stories that the Guptas don't want to see. That being said, however, there was an interesting point that was made, and now I just forget where, but it was in an opinion page where they said that the fact that there is such high levels of unemployment, 27.7%, and Andile can only attract 5 or 6 people to his protests outside journalists' houses, shows shows that the majority of people reject this. Even if they're going to get paid for this, most people do not feel comfortable with doing this. However, I think there is legitimate criticism of mainstream journalism. And I think that there is a sort of implicit, sometimes, censorship. For example, sometimes ANN7 journalists will ask questions in press conferences that are clearly being sent to them from the office by people who are in direct contact with the Guptas, because sometimes the ANN7 journalists can't even read the question that they're trying to get across from their cell phone. And journalists will laugh at them or mock them. And I think that's the type of thing that journalists should definitely not do. We have to respect each other as colleagues, regardless of our differing opinions, and we've actually seen a lot of that. I've been out on the field where ANN7 journalists, good colleagues of mine, have been attacked by Fees Must Fall protesters, as well as people aligned to the EFF, and all of us have stood up for them. So I think that there needs to be a greater sense of colleague responsibility amongst journalists.
Something I noticed in the last few days being here, it seems as certain journalists from ANN7 feel a bit uncomfortable socializing in the media lounge. It's just been an observation on my side. Do you feel that certain of their journalists are being unfairly targeted because of the media house that they're working for?
Certainly, and when I've engaged with members of my own family and members of the public about what they think of ANN7 journalists, they're very quick to criticize them, and they're very, saying that they're leading this propaganda, that they're basically the Fox News of South Africa. And when I try to point out to them that journalism is an industry in decline and that it doesn't have these massive revenues that it had in the past, and it would be quite difficult for these journalists to go and find other jobs, then they start to really understand. So perhaps that needs to come forward more strongly, that ANN7 journalists, while some of them are pushing a particular line, others need a job or they need experience to journalism as an intern, and that was what they could find at the time.
Finally, Tahila, do you think things are going to get better from an ANC perspective in the next 6 months, or are we going to see more factional battles play out in the public eye till the December conference?
Well, I think it's going to depend very much on whether the ANC here today decides that they want to try and win in 2019, and to do that they're going to have to try and keep a lid on those factional battles, or if they've decided that their own interests and their own types of things that they would like to see when they have their arms on the levers of power trump that. So I think that will be very much dependent on what we're going to see in the next few days. There's a story in Mail and Guardian today that there could be a possibility of them trying to work out a compromise leadership. And that, of course, would be with regard to looking at 2019. But if not enough people are willing to see that, then I think the factional battles are only going to get worse.
Thank you so much for your time. I think really interesting points put through, and I think that the media play a very important role in putting out to the public what's really happening, although we'd like to see what's happening behind closed doors, but we're still giving some kind of information to the media out there. Thank you so much. Okay, that was really interesting points put through, and I think it's really important, as I said, that the media are given the freedoms to put through what's going on for the public to make up their own minds. We've come to the end of today's show. Thank you for joining us. I think really interesting points put through by the people we've spoken to, and I think very importantly, the media freedom is something that's very important for us to speak about. And remember to tune in tomorrow, where we're going to bring you more highlights from the last day, the final day, and we can bring you some more analysis regarding the policies that could be implemented. From me, Mohammed Chinara, and from Pervez Khan, fi amanillah, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.